I didn't expect a 3-day hike through the San Bernardino Mountains to mess with my head more than finals week ever did. But here we are. It started as a tradition. Me and Jordan, a couple of trail-addicted idiots who took the same backpacking trip every spring break since college. It was our thing. No Wi-Fi, no deadlines, just dirt trails and campfire ramen. But this year felt different. Not because of the trail or the weather, because of me. I'd spent the last 6 months trying to ignore the ache in my chest every time he laughed at one of my stupid jokes, or the way my heart betrayed me when our shoulders brushed. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting. Jordan was straight, he always had been. The kind of guy who'd flirt with waitresses just to get me to roll my eyes. The kind of guy who once drunkenly told me I was the only person he trusted with his life, and then passed out on my couch with a slice of pizza on his chest. I packed light this time, not just in gear, but in expectation. I swore to myself it was just a trip, just us, like always. Still, when I picked him up that morning, my hands clenched the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. He threw his backpack in the back seat, grinning like he always did before we hit the trail, wide, genuine, no filter. Ready to disconnect from the grid and maybe get mauled by a bear? Only if it's a cute one, I said, keeping my tone playful. He snorted, rolling his eyes, but I caught it. That faint blush that crept up his neck. Maybe it was the cold, maybe not. The drive was long, winding through pine-lined roads and thinning cell signal. By the time we reached the trailhead, the world had already started to blur into nothing but trees, sky, and possibility. He adjusted the strap on his pack and looked over at me. "You good?" I nodded, but my chest was tight. "Yeah, let's go." I knew this trip would change something. I just didn't know what, and maybe that's why I couldn't stop looking at him when he turned to walk ahead. Sunlight hitting the back of his neck, warm and golden, like something out of a memory I hadn't lived yet. Jordan and I met in sophomore year, the way most dumb friendships start, in the middle of chaos. Our biology lab partners both dropped the class during the second week, leaving us to awkwardly glance at each other across the room, like two kids left out during dodgeball. He wore a hoodie with a faded comic book logo, and had a permanent case of bedhead. I had a chip on my shoulder and zero patience for people who didn't take things seriously. He spilled a beaker on the second day. I insulted his pipetting skills. Somehow that turned into friendship. From then on, we were inseparable. He was the first person I ever hiked with, just an easy local trail back then, nothing serious. He brought trail mix with peanut butter. Cups. I brought too much water and a grumpy attitude. We ended the day watching the sun set over a lake, laughing until our ribs hurt because he fell into a patch of mud while trying to take a candid picture of me. That hike became the first of many. There was something about the way Jordan could make any trail, no matter how rough, feel like home. He didn't fill the silence with pointless chatter. He let it breathe. He made it safe to exist. "You still bring way too much water," he teased now, nudging my side as we navigated a narrow pass. "And you still bring zero common sense," I shot back, eyeing the lopsided way his pack leaned. "Pretty sure your sleeping bag is hanging halfway out." He looked over his shoulder. "It's a new system, streamlined, tactical. It's going to fall off a cliff. Like your faith in my abilities," he said with mock offense. We laughed, the kind that settled into our bones. It was easy with him. It always had been, but lately easy had turned into complicated. I found myself watching the way his lips curled when he smiled too long. I noticed how he always waited for me to catch up even though he hiked faster. I noticed everything. By the time we reached the clearing to set up camp, the sky was darkening with clouds we hadn't expected. "Think it's gonna rain?" I asked, glancing up. Jordan was already unrolling the tent. "Not according to the forecast." "And you checked that when?" "Last night. In the city," he shrugged. "Optimism is part of my charm." We got the tent up just before the drizzle started. Light at first, then steady. I watched droplets bead along the nylon as we sat inside, shoulders barely touching. Our sleeping bags were side by side, and mine was already zipped up. Jordan stared at his like it had betrayed him. Dude, he muttered. I think I grabbed the wrong bag. What do you mean, wrong? I think this one's from when I was like 15. I raised a brow. You brought your childhood sleeping bag on a mountain trip. I thought it was my new one. They're the same color. I bit back a laugh, watching him try to stretch out inside it. His feet poked through the end. Okay, laugh it up, he grumbled, glaring at me. I held my hands up. I'm not laughing. You're laughing inside. Maybe. He sat up, with a sigh rubbing his neck. Guess I'll just freeze to death while you sleep like a burrito. You're ridiculous. I'll leave you my playlist in my will. I hesitated. We could share, if it gets too cold. Jordan looked. Over at me then. Really looked. His eyes lingered just a second too long, flickering to my mouth before quickly darting back up. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe. My heart skipped. Something unspoken passed between us, quiet but heavy. I looked away first, pretending to mess with my backpack. Outside, the rain picked up, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Inside, the silence stretched, thick with tension I wasn't ready to name, but I felt it. I know he did too. The storm rolled in faster than we'd expected. By nightfall, the soft drizzle had turned into a relentless downpour, hammering against the thin fabric of the tent like a warning. The temperature dropped with it. I huddled inside my sleeping bag, watching my breath form in wisps of mist in the narrow space between us. Jordan sat cross-legged in his hoodie, trying to fake comfort, but I could see the way he rubbed his arms and kept shifting, like he couldn't settle into his own skin. Okay, he finally said, voice low. I admit it. I'm freezing. I pretended to think for a moment, then sighed theatrically. Well, you did bring a sleeping bag designed for middle schoolers. I misjudged. Let it go. I unzipped mine and opened it part way. Get in before your optimism gives you hypothermia. His eyebrows lifted. You serious? Would I joke about your slow, dramatic death? He didn't answer, just stared at me for a second too long. Then, with a quick movement, he kicked off his shoes, crawled in beside me and zipped it shut behind us. The space was tight, too tight for comfort, but not tight enough to pretend we weren't touching. His leg pressed against mine, his arm grazing my side. Our breath mingled in the small air pocket we shared, warm and sharp and full of everything I hadn't let myself say. I tried to focus on anything else. The rhythm of the rain, the distant crack of thunder, the way his hair smelled faintly of pine and whatever shampoo he always stole from my bathroom. He shifted slightly, elbow brushing against my ribs. You okay? Yeah, I said quickly, maybe too quickly, just thinking. About. Nothing important. He didn't push. That was the thing about Jordan. He never asked more than you were willing to give. He just waited. Quietly. Like he knew I'd hand over pieces of myself when I was ready. I wasn't sure I ever would be. Being this close to him was messing with my head. I could feel the heat of his body along my side, the rise and fall of his chest. Every small movement felt exaggerated, like the tent was some kind of amplifier for sensation. When his hand shifted and brushed mine under the sleeping bag, I flinched. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. You cold? He asked, noticing. No, I stopped. Lied. A little. Without a word, he moved his arm, slipping it under my head, then around my shoulders. His body curved closer like a shield. I froze. I didn't breathe. My heart was alive. Wire in my chest. Better, he whispered. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what I was answering. I stared at the ceiling of the tent, barely illuminated by the dim glow of his headlamp on the ground. My thoughts were loud, chaotic. How easy it would be to just turn, rest my head on his chest, to finally ask the questions I'd buried so deep they'd started to rot. Does this mean something to you? Or is it just warmth? Just convenience? Jordan sighed, his breath tickling my neck. You remember that trip we did junior year? The one with the bear scare? I smiled faintly. How could I forget? You tripped on a root and screamed like someone shot you. I was being strategic, distracting the bear. There was no bear, Jordan. It was a squirrel. A large squirrel. Vicious. You weren't there. I was literally right next to you. We both laughed, the sound small but real. His chest vibrated softly against me, and I closed my eyes, holding on to that sensation for a beat too long. He didn't pull away. There was a pause, long and full, and then his voice dropped, quieter this time. You ever think about what things might be like if stuff was different? I turned my head just slightly, enough to see the outline of his face in the low light. Different how? I don't know. He exhaled slowly, like if we weren't just friends. The air shifted. My whole body went still. He was still looking up, not at me, like he hadn't really meant to say it out loud, like the words had slipped past the filters he usually kept so carefully in place. What makes you say that? I asked, barely above a whisper. He shrugged. Just, sometimes I wonder, like when we do this, these trips, and it feels easy, like it should be more. But then I tell myself I'm just overthinking. My throat tightened. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't even know what he meant, not really. Was he testing me, joking? But then he turned, slowly, his forehead nearly brushing mine in the low, dark space. His eyes met mine. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. I just know I don't want to mess this up. Whatever this is. Neither of us moved. The storm outside raged, wind howling through the trees like some ancient thing. But in that small space, time stood still. My heart beat so loudly I thought he could hear it. I wanted to say me too. I wanted to lean in just enough to see what would happen. But I didn't. I stayed still, afraid that one wrong move would make everything fall apart. And yet, he didn't move away. His hand, still resting against mine, stayed there. Our fingers didn't intertwine, but they didn't part either. We just stayed, closer than we'd ever been, closer than I knew how to handle. And in the silence that followed, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just afraid of losing what we had. I was afraid of how badly I wanted more. The storm lingered deep into the night, stretching its fingers across the mountains like it didn't want to let go. Inside the tent, time moved differently, warped by the closeness, the silence, and the weight of what hadn't been said. Neither of us slept. I felt Jordan shift now and then beside me, adjusting, breathing deeper, then shallower again. Our bodies were tangled in ways that would have meant nothing between two friends, but none of this felt meaningless anymore. My hand, still brushing his under the sleeping bag, pulsed with tension. Our sides were flush. His arm rested around my shoulders and he hadn't pulled it away, and still I couldn't speak. I lay there staring into the dark, heart hammering like a second storm inside me. My thoughts spun in every direction. I wanted to say everything. I wanted to tell him I'd been falling for years, slow and quiet, like water shaping stone. But what if I shattered the only thing we had? What if he pulled away? The question twisted inside me, sharp and hollow. Then Jordan spoke. His voice was barely audible, like he was afraid the words might come back to hurt him. I keep thinking, he said slowly, about how easy it is to be with you, how natural this feels, and I don't know if that's normal or... He trailed off. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. He swallowed. I heard it, felt it. Sometimes I catch myself, looking at you longer than I should, thinking things I'm not supposed to think about my best friend. There it was, a pause, then a laugh, quiet, shaky. I sound crazy, don't I? No, I said before I could stop myself. My voice cracked. No, you don't. He turned toward me just enough that I could feel his breath against my cheek. Then why won't you look at me? I turned. Our faces were only inches apart now. I'm scared, I admitted. He blinked. Of me? Of this. My hand shifted, brushing his. This time I didn't pull away. Of what happens if I say it and you don't feel the same. Jordan's brow furrowed, not in confusion, but something softer, sadder. He touched the edge of my wrist gently, like testing if I'd let him. I did. "I've been trying not to feel anything," he whispered. "Not like this. Not with you." "Why?" "Because I thought it would ruin us." His fingers grazed mine. "I didn't want to lose you. You're the only person who feels like home." My chest tightened. For a second, neither of us spoke. The rain was softer now, like the storm was finally tiring, like it had said everything it needed to say. "You remember," I said slowly, "when we went night hiking in that canyon last summer?" He nodded. "I couldn't stop staring at you. The way your eyes looked in the moonlight. I wanted to say something then, but I was too scared." Jordan didn't blink. "I was watching you too." That broke something open in me, something old, something buried under years of pretending. I felt it crash down like a wave, and suddenly the words wouldn't stay quiet anymore. "I like you," I said, all at once. Not just as a friend, not as a phase, not because we're here in this tent and it's raining and dramatic. "I like you, Jordan. I've liked you for a long time." He stared at me. I felt my stomach sink. "Say something. Please, say something." Then his voice came, low, raw. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear that." Relief didn't hit me all at once. Crept in slowly, like dawn through fog. He moved closer, just a fraction, but it felt like everything. His forehead touched mine. Our eyes closed at the same time, like we'd rehearsed it in dreams. "I didn't think I was allowed to want this," he whispered. "I told myself you deserved someone who wasn't confused, someone sure." "I've never been more sure of anything," I murmured. His nose brushed mine, and I felt him pause. A breath, a heartbeat. Then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. It was soft, hesitant, the kind of kiss that trembled with everything unsaid. His lips met mine like a question and an answer all at once. I pressed back, hands, finding his hoodie clinging gently. Our bodies were already close, but somehow that kiss brought us even closer. I felt his sigh against my mouth, like he'd been holding it in forever. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads still touching, we both laughed, quiet, nervous, joyful. "That was better than I imagined," he said. "You've imagined it?" "For longer than I'll admit." We lay there, tangled up, the sleeping bag twisted around us like a secret we finally dared to share. His thumb moved over my wrist in slow, rhythmic circles. I felt calm in a way I hadn't in years. "I don't know what this means," Jordan said after a long pause. "Or what happens next." I nodded. "Me neither, but I want to find out. Together." He smiled and it reached his eyes, genuine, full of light. "Together," he repeated. The storm outside had passed. The wind had stilled. Only the faint dripping of water from the trees remained, like the earth itself was exhaling. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could too. When I woke up, the rain had stopped. Sunlight filtered through the damp canvas of the tent, casting soft gold patterns across Jordan's face. He was still asleep, one arm flung across my waist, his breathing slow and steady. I lay there watching him, half afraid that the night before had been a dream, that maybe I'd imagined the kiss, the words, the warmth of his hand in mine. But then he stirred, blinking slowly awake. His eyes met mine, and he smiled in that sleepy, half-lidded way that made something flutter in my chest. "Morning," he murmured, "morning." There was a beat of silence before his hand slid up, fingertips grazing my chest as if checking I was real. "Still here?" he asked. I grinned. "I'm not going anywhere." Jordan chuckled and stretched, the movement causing his shirt to ride up slightly, exposing a sliver of his stomach. He caught me looking and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, already checking me out?" "I've been checking you out for years," I replied without missing a beat. He laughed, a soft, surprised sound. "Bold now, huh?" I shrugged. Figured I earned it. We lay there for a while longer, limbs tangled beneath the shared sleeping bag, the air warm with something unspoken but no longer unacknowledged. When he rolled onto his side, propping his head up on his hand, I mirrored him. You know, he said, brushing a knuckle along my jaw. This doesn't magically solve everything. I know. We live different lives. I've never dated a guy before, and I don't want to screw this up. You won't, I said, quieter this time. We'll figure it out day by day. He nodded, his expression softening. I want to try. I want you. Not just here in this tent, not just in the woods. I want you in the real world too, the Stee. Weight of that landed somewhere deep inside me. I want that too, I said. But maybe let's not start with telling our parents over a group text. Jordan laughed again, then playfully shoved my shoulder. God, no, one terrifying step at a time. We emerged from the tent with sleepy eyes and messy hair, moving in sync without speaking. Jordan handed me a thermos of lukewarm coffee he'd packed, and I sipped it gratefully. So, he said, kicking at a patch of wet leaves, you realize we still have 6 miles to hike today. Right. With your slow pace, we'll get back to the car by next weekend. He shot me a mock glare. You're lucky I like you now. Now, I smirked. You liked me before, you were just in denial. Jordan stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body again. His voice dropped just a little. Maybe. But last night made it real. He reached down, interlocking our fingers without needing to ask. I glanced at our hands. His. Thumb tracing mine, and felt a quiet sort of joy bloom in my chest. Whatever's next, I said, I want to face it with you. Jordan leaned in, his forehead gently resting against mine. Yeah, he whispered. Me too. We started packing up, but everything felt different now. Not just because of what had happened, but because of what it meant. Every touch, every glance carried weight, a promise. It was like we'd always been orbiting each other, and only now had we finally collided. And despite the mud, the wet clothes, and the long hike ahead, I felt light, whole. The forest stretched out before us like a path newly carved, uncertain, but inviting. And as we stepped into it, his hand still in mine, I knew this was just the beginning of something real, something worth getting lost in. By the time we reached the ridge overlooking the parking lot, the sky had cleared into a brilliant wide blue. Puffy clouds drifted slowly over the peaks, and below us, the valley sprawled like a memory being folded away. Everything smelled clean, pine and fresh rain, like the world had been reset overnight. Jordan stood beside me, his arm brushing mine, as we took in the view one last time. He hadn't let go of my hand once since we left the tent that morning. Every now and then I'd catch him stealing a glance at me, like he still couldn't believe any of this was real. I knew the feeling. This trip didn't go exactly as planned, I said, nudging him gently. Nope, he replied, a playful grin tugging at his lips. Less relaxing hike, more emotional breakthrough in a nylon tent. I laughed, shaking my head. We should make that a sticker. Let's get matching ones. Put them on our water bottles like trauma. Badges. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted in his expression. The joking settled, leaving something deeper in its place. I don't want this to fade when we go back, he said quietly. It won't. Promise? I didn't hesitate. Promise. He smiled. That kind of quiet, genuine smile he saved. For rare moments like after finishing a big project or catching a perfect sunset. The kind of smile that told me he was letting his guard down. We started the descent in comfortable silence, occasionally pointing out slick patches or helping each other over rocks. At one point, Jordan slipped slightly, and I caught his elbow. He muttered a curse, embarrassed, but I just tightened my grip and said, I've got you, and I meant it in more ways than one. When we reached the car, the first thing Jordan did was pull out his phone. I assumed he was checking the route home, but he turned it toward me. It was a photo he'd taken sometime earlier, me walking a few steps ahead, the mountains behind me, sunlight catching in my hair. I was mid-laugh. I want to remember this, he said. That bad, huh? He rolled his eyes. No, dumbass, I mean you, us, this trip. He set the photo as his lock screen. I didn't say anything at first. I just leaned over and kissed his cheek. He went still for a second like he hadn't expected it, but then turned into it, his fingers brushing my jaw. "You know," he said as we slid into the car, "this is going to be complicated." I nodded. "Most things worth it are. We're gonna get questions. I've got answers," he grinned. "What, like flashcards? I've been preparing my whole life." We laughed again, and it felt easy. Right, like we'd turned some invisible page neither of us could go back from, and we didn't want to. As we pulled onto the road, winding back down the mountain, the playlist Jordan had made started up again. A familiar song came on, one we always used to belt in the car, screaming the lyrics off-key just to make each other laugh. This time, we sang it softer, together. His fingers found mine again on the center console. No theatrics, no fanfare. Just the quiet confidence of two people choosing to be seen, to be known, and to keep walking forward, rain, storms, and everything in between. And maybe, just maybe, love had been waiting for us the whole time. We just had to hike far enough to find it.